The Weekly starts now.
The coronavirus pandemic has been a boon for U.S. home improvements and repairs as households modified their living spaces for work, schools, and leisure in response to the COVID-19 outbreak and spread. Harvard Joint Center for Housing Studies has just released a new report titled Improving America's Housing 2021 that chronicles the pandemic's impact on the remodeling sector and places its analysis within historical context of the past decade. Joining us today to discuss that report is Abbe Will, the Center's Associate Project Director, Remodeling Futures. Abbe, welcome to the Weekly.
Thank you.
Abbe, despite a crippling economic downturn, home improvement spending showed modest growth to $419 billion last year, thanks in part to pandemic-induced factors. The Center thinks that growth is sustainable. Why?
Yeah, so certainly some of the trends that have shifted in the remodeling industry due to the pandemic, we think could be lasting, certainly in the shorter term. I think there's still a question about how long some of these changes might last. For example, the surge that we saw in DIY activity and smaller projects on the house, will that stay elevated, for another couple years permanently? Has that really reversed the long-term decline that we'd seen in DIY share of spending over the last couple decades? I think that's still yet to be seen, but there are other factors that the pandemic actually accelerated historical trends. For example, work on exterior of the home, replacement and exterior upgrades, as well as outside property improvements, kind of your fencing and decking and landscaping activities. Those types of activities had already been on the rise, a bigger part of the market even before the pandemic, and then the pandemic certainly accelerated those types of projects. So we think that the growth that we saw last year is likely to continue this year, and in fact, we projected a little bit stronger growth for 2021 than in 2020. And then, of course, there are longer-term trends that we think bode well for future growth in the industry that are unrelated to the pandemic. The aging of the housing stock and the continued aging of our population, as well as pretty big wave of millennial homeowners coming into those prime home buying ages. So lots of shorter term and longer term trends that we can point to that we think will help sustain growth in the industry, currently, this year, next year, and for many years.
Mm-hmm. I found a lot of the detail, particularly the historical stuff, to be fascinating. What were a couple of primary takeaways that you take from the report?
Yeah, so I think the big concerns for us these days have been, what has changed with the pandemic. Is that a shorter term change or a longer term change? So those are kind of big picture, what we want to understand about the market, and kind of unwrap all of those little bits. So, I know we just talked about some of those items, but certainly, one that we have had kind of a renewed focus on is deferred maintenance and repairs and upgrades, replacements in particular to the housing stock, that even before the pandemic, a large share of homeowners in any given year are really not spending either anything to improve or maintain their homes, or spending very little to improve or maintain their homes. And we did find that those homeowners who were underinvesting in their homes tended to be older, tended to be lower income, tended to live in lower valued homes, but still, lower income homeowners are a considerable part of our remodeling market.
Like 10%, right?
Exactly. They make up 10% of spending annually over the decades. And so we want to think about, especially the homeowners who have lost income due to the pandemic, who have lost jobs due to the pandemic, and to think about, what amount of maintenance and repair and those kind of critical replacements are not happening, haven't been happening. And, can those homeowners who've kind of been struggling even just to make mortgage payments, can they really catch up to, do these critical repairs on their homes before it's, kind of too late? So that's a part of the market that we've kind of seen some renewed focus on and wanting to understand, how can we address that potential for continued underinvestment in the market.
My reading of the report was that older, more affluent homeowners who focus on home improvement spending for replacements seem to be the remodeling industry's sweet spot right now. Does the center foresee the demographic composite changing over the next decade? And if so, what might that sweet spot evolve into?
Yeah, so older homeowners age 55 and older currently account for over half of total spending on home improvements in the US. So they are a massive part of the market, an important part of the market. And we do foresee that demographic continuing to be a critical part of the market moving forward. So age 55 plus, essentially the baby boomers, essentially in the age range of mid 50s to mid 70s right now. But that means we have this still large group of baby boomers that are kind of moving into those older age groups. And yes, older owners typically have been in their homes longer and have maybe done, some of that discretionary work already, but then, focusing more of their work on critical replacements, again, the roofing, siding, windows, doors. So we think that that'll continue to be a big part of the market moving forward. Of course, also what we think about with older owners, and continue to see in surveys again and again that older owners report wanting to stay in their homes, in their communities for as long as they can, essentially aging in place. And what does that mean for our housing stock when we know that our housing stock is currently fairly inaccessible? There aren't a lot of homes that have even basic accessibility features like a bedroom and a full bathroom on the first floor and an accessible an accessible entry into the home. So very few homes have any or even some of those features. And so we know that, if older homeowners, they're a bigger part of the market, they're a growing part of the market, wanting to stay in their homes or communities. And, what are they going to need to do to modify their homes, to make them more accessible, to make them safer? So we do expect that with the baby boomers aging, accessibility retrofits will be a bigger part of the market moving forward too.
Mm-hmm. The report shows a pretty sizable bump in the number of younger adults that became homeowners last year, and their spending jumped too, but they still lag peak years. And does the center believe that this cohort can ever get out of the single digit ghetto that it's in right now and be a major part of the remodeling tract?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we've all been almost waiting for that to happen. And so, right, the story there with the millennial generation and now even the post-millennial generation, thinking about younger households moving into home ownership. And we do see, just like with the baby boomers, the number of households in these age ranges, we have a large wave of younger younger households who are just now kind of entering the prime first time home buying age range, 30, 35. And so we expect that demographics alone, just having this larger wave of households moving into those age ranges, that we expect to see the share of homeowners, younger homeowners increase, as well as then their improvement spending. It's challenging, of course. I mean, I think there are additional challenges, especially when we're going through, such a difficult economy, and that house prices have continued to rise in most all parts of the market. Although interest rates have remained very, very low. And so that, is helping affordability, certainly. But there are a lot of challenges for younger households to become homeowners. And in fact, we saw last year that markets around the country that tend to be more affordable markets, kind of your smaller interior metros, actually had stronger growth in remodeling activity, and this was measured by remodeling permitting, than our kind of big, expensive metros, kind of the coastal metros, the New Yorks and LAs and San Franciscos, that actually saw declines in permitting last year for the most part. So we think that, the story with younger households becoming homeowners, that they're, it's just a much easier prospect to become a homeowner in a more affordable market, and that those will be brighter spots for remodeling activity and really for diversity of remodeling activity. You have more younger owners, and they spend differently, they do different projects, typically spending more for DIY projects, but also, just focused more on discretionary projects as well. So we do have hope that we'll continue to see those gains. We've seen gains in the younger owners and remodeling spending and home ownership for the last several years, and we think that'll continue.
What are some other trends the center is keeping an eye on that would tell you which way the remodeling wind is blowing?
Well, certainly longer term trends for the market, we think about is, the renewed focus on home and focus on doing so many activities at home. So working from home in particular, we think that the share of owners continuing to work from home will likely remain elevated, certainly not as high as what we first
every
saw.
number I've seen says the same thing. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's meaningful for home improvements. We think that, even if you're not working from home permanently, although we think that, that'll be part of the story, but otherwise, folks who might work, 2 or 3 days at home are still, looking to have a nice space to do that and to improve the spaces that they have to do that. And so we think those are some, positive impacts for the industry moving forward. Deferred projects, some of the deferred discretionary projects from this last year, we think that'll keep the market kind of, humming along in the coming year. And again, thinking about, some longer term trends with healthy homes. We think so healthy homes was a small part of the market, but a growing part of the remodeling market before the pandemic. And so we think the pandemic likely has very much accelerated the healthy home market for, whether that's air filtration or ventilation, thinking about just having good air quality and good ventilation in your home, and as well as all the other aspects, water purification and the renewed focus on making sure that, if we're spending all this time in our homes, let's make sure they're healthy for us. So those are some parts that we're thinking will be bigger and growing parts of the market moving forward. There are others too. Home automation we can talk about in terms of, again, the millennials coming into home ownership and home improvements, and being digital natives and really just expecting to do everything in their lives on their phone or digitally. That we think home automations will become a bigger part of the market too. Although we think that could also play into the older segment of the market too, with home accessibility. The intersection of home automation and accessibility could be very important for, again, keeping older owners safe and comfortable in their homes. So lots of areas that we're kind of looking to as bright and brighter spots for the market.
Well, Abbe, thanks for spending a couple of minutes with us today. I'm sure our readers look forward to reading the report when it comes out. And again, thanks to our audience for listening. This is John Caulfield from Professional Remodeler.